We have good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of April 21st. This is our regular meeting. Could we please have the roll call?
Good evening, Commission. Commissioner Raskin.
Here.
Commissioner Lambert.
Here.
Commissioner Fondo-Bernardi.
Here.
Commissioner Reese.
Here.
Commissioner Fresco.
Here.
Vice Chair Pastor is away tonight, and then Chair Landers.
Here. Thank you. Let us have. Well, let's keep going with the planning director's report.
Right. So waiting for the slide to come up. Not sure where that's coming from. I could actually pull it up on my phone if it's not going to be on the screen. Although I know Commissioner Fresco likes it on the screen. But
I do.
Melissa, do you know, can someone pull that up?
I do not have it. If you have a copy, I can share my screen if you send it to me.
Okay. Okay, Melissa, I just sent it to you. I'll go slightly out of order. After I was going to do this at the end, but I'll just do it first while Melissa gets the slide up. Wanted to mention the kind of reopening and return to work that we're starting to talk about at the city. Don't have specific dates on exactly when that will happen, but we are planning to open the public counter sometime in early May. Again, I don't have an exact date yet. The idea is that the counter would be open, limited hours, probably something like Monday and Wednesday morning. It would be by appointment only, but someone could come in and we would have it staffed so that they could speak to kind of the 5 divisions that are critical in permit processing. So planning, building and safety, mobility, public works, and finance. So all of those 5 groups would be represented, and again, someone could come in and have a face-to-face interaction with city staff on permitting issues. We will still, of course, keep the current online system going, and actually we will encourage people to continue to use that. It has been going really well. We like to say we made more progress in online permitting over the last year than we had in several years before that. So again, we plan to keep that service going, and people don't need to come to City Hall, but for those situations where they either do need to or they just feel more comfortable doing that, we should be able to offer that service again sometime in early May. And then the other part of it is just having staff come back to work. That will also be a staged process. We will still allow and in some cases encourage teleworking. So it's not that everybody will come back at the same time, but we will start to populate the building, both City Hall and City Hall East. As you may remember, it was about a year ago now when we were planning to move into City Hall East to the new building. And so now we're coming back and then also moving into that building for the first time. So exciting there to actually get into that building and see how it all works. Then moving on to upcoming items. So for the commission on May 5th, we have a development review permit for 1549 or 46 9th Street. So it's a relatively small project. I think it's only around 9 or 10 units, but it's a development review permit because it's located in a residential district. That same night, we have a alcohol conditional use permit for the new Target at 420 Broadway. May 12th is a special meeting, a follow-up on the housing element draft concepts. And then May 19th, we have the text amendment and conditional use permit for the Oceana Hotel. The proposed amendment would allow them to open their on-site restaurant to people other than guests who are staying in the hotel. So as it currently is structured, if you're a guest or if you're a friend of a guest, you can you can go to the restaurant and have a meal. What they're asking is that they be allowed to open it up to anybody who wants to come in and enjoy the restaurant. In terms of City Council actions, at their last meeting on April 13th, the Council did an extension of the emergency IZO restricting non-residential uses. They also adopted an ordinance on some cleanups to the sign ordinance, and then also really some minor cleanup items on the economic recovery interim zoning ordinance that's currently in effect. And so I think that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do I see anybody wave? Yeah, Leslie does. Go for it. Okay.
Thank you. David, we have received a letter a couple weeks ago from the developer of the project at Santa Monica and Yale, expressing economic distress. Has anybody reached out to him to see what can be done to make sure that project happens?
We are working with that applicant. They, I think, I want to speak out of turn here, but I think they are submitting a revised plan, and we're looking at that in the context of the state density bonus. That's what it would take in order for, according as you read in his letter, in order for the project to be feasible. But we are, looking at that project in the context of other housing bonus projects that we've received. So it is definitely part of the mix, and I know staff is in regular contact with that applicant and their legal representative to work with them and try and figure out what can be done in order to make the project work.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? All right, terrific. Let us now move on to the part where I give you your boilerplate instructions. Welcome to the Planning Commission once again. Please note tonight's procedures for public comment, and I do want to make an announcement for anyone who is here tonight expecting to comment on item 9A. You should have received an email. If you registered to give public comment, you should have received an email from staff advising you that the applicant has submitted a request for a continuance, which we will take up shortly. However, I want to make you aware that if the continuance is taken up and approved by the Commission, there will be no public comment on item 9A tonight because the item will be continued to a future date. So please bear that in mind if you are online or on the phone, watching, waiting to call in for item 9A. At this time, we do not know whether it will be heard because we have to deal with the applicant's request for a continuance. Other than that, if you are, however, if you did pre-register, pre-registration was available per the agenda, and pre-registration for oral public comment closed at 3:30 p.m. today. If you did register for public comment, please do check your email for the call-in instructions, and those instructions were emailed at the start of this meeting. We may also have received public comment for other items on tonight's agenda, so I want to make sure that those folks are aware that they need to check their email for their instructions. Written comments received up until noon today have been read by the Commission. Comments received after 12 p.m. today will be considered part of the record of proceedings, but will not be posted online with the Planning Commission's agenda, might not be reviewed by the Planning Commission, and will not be read aloud during public comment during the meeting. Again, as always, want to remind everyone that the moderator chat function in Blue Jeans is for technical help from admin staff only. It is not for public comment. Our hardworking administrative staff are doing their best to manage the meeting, and so they're there to help you, but not to deal with public comment. We on the Commission cannot see the chat, and comments will not be forwarded to the Commission or entered into the record. Once again, I just want to be very clear with everyone. There is a possibility that item 9A will be continued at the start of the item. and so it is reasonably likely that the item will not be heard and that there will be no public comment on the item. With that, let me ask if any commissioners have it now. Being none, let us now move on to we do not have any minutes. We do not have any statements of official action. Let us now move on to the consent calendar, item 8. There's one item on the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would like to move the consent calendar or pull any items?
I move this consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Fresco and seconded by Commissioner Reese. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar? Commissioner Raskin, who is still muted. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Michael Rook and the city team, as well as everyone on the applicant team, for their remarkable work this last week to revise the affordable housing unit mix for the project. I really appreciate everyone's ability to get this done given the tight time constraints here. So as my colleagues on the Planning Commission know, I have some serious concerns about the fractional rounding procedures in Municipal Code Section 9.10.070. And I think that it's fundamentally irreconcilable with other provisions in the General Plan and Municipal Code. But all that being said, it is not our duty as planning commissioners to legislate from the dais or to prioritize our own personal preferences above legal requirements. So with all that being said, I'm going to vote in favor of this project, but I hope that we can, at some point soon, revisit those rounding procedures in an upcoming code revision.
Great, thank you very much. Any other comments on the consent calendar? Being none, let's have a roll call. Are we ready for a roll? Oh.
Commissioner Raskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert,
Yes.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco,
Yes.
and absent is Vice Chair Pastor and Chair Landris.
Yes. So that passes unanimously, and we now can move on to item 9A. As I indicated earlier, there's a request for a continuance. Let me see. We don't have Jing yet, do we?
We do.
Okay. So, David, do you want to speak to David, or well, maybe Heidi? Do you want to give us a opening, and then we'll start to process what we need to process?
I believe Tony Kim will be giving you an opening.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey, Tony.
I guess the opening was really just to introduce the applicant's representative for them to make their formal request at the hearing for the continuance.
Okay. Can we bring up the applicant's representative?
Yes.
Hello, this is Sherry Bonstell, and I was recently retained to represent the Shore Hotel. I'm a land use attorney and a partner at Jepper Mangles, Butler and Mitchell in Century City. And because I was just brought on in the past week to represent the client, I request that this matter be continued to a date certain, up to 45 days, pursuant to Section 93760B3 of the Santa Monica Municipal Code that allows extensions for recent addition of council. We would also like to work with the planning staff to consider the items that were identified in their staff report and to come back with more clarity on the issues for the Planning Commission. We would prefer to come back in 30 days, which would be the meeting on May 19th. I understand that the housing element is on the agenda and there may not be room on the agenda for us on that date. So if not, we request to come back on June 2nd or as soon as possible thereafter. Thank you very much.
We lost you from the screen there. Let me turn it over to the city attorney to advise us on what the basis for the request and our options for responding to it.
So you've received this request, and as legal counsel mentioned, there is a procedure set forth in Santa Monica Municipal Code section 937060 that provides that once notice has been given and the agenda has been posted, an applicant may request a continuance, and the commission will vote on that continuance and shall grant it if good cause is established and the delay will not be detrimental or prejudicial to the city or any interested person. Good cause may include under that provision the recent addition or substitution of counsel. So if you so choose, you would be voting at this moment only on the continuance. You would not be discussing the merits of the application at all. And if you do agree to the continuance, then you would not be opening the hearing or having any testimony at all this evening. So that's basically where you are.
Thank you. And can I ask, Tony, the applicant has requested a date certain for consideration. Is staff prepared to recommend a date for us to include in our motion?
That's a tricky one. We do actually have May 19th as a hearing date. I believe the housing element is scheduled to be heard at the first meeting of June. We do have some concern, though, with being able to turn it around in less than a month, given that the anticipation is that the applicant will be submitting a text amendment application. So I think realistically, given that the first June meeting is for the housing element, we would prefer to come back to the second June meeting of Planning Commission. However, that would be above the 45 days that the applicant is requesting.
So that would be, is there a date?
June 16th.
June 16th?
Yes.
Okay. Can we have the applicant back?
Yes, sorry, my video is not working, but we agree to June 16th.
You agree to June 16th. And just for the record, can you confirm your date of appointment on which you were added as counsel?
I was hired last Friday, and I had my first conversations with staff today.
I see. Okay. Thank you. All right. And, okay, so is there someone who would like to move pursuant to the procedures noted earlier that this item be continued to the Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, June 16th, subject, of course, to the preparation of materials for that meeting? Is there a motion?
I move.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Lambert. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fondo Bernardi. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Raskin? And please limit your discussion to the matter of the date or the fact of the continuance and not anything related to the permit.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a land use attorney myself, I appreciate the various complications that arise when you're hired at the last minute for these types of matters. That said, I'm a little bit uncomfortable given that so many people I expect have taken time out of their lives to attend tonight's hearing and speak. And, I think that we'll, be burdening a large number of members of the public who have taken the time to speak tonight. But that said, I'm looking at the code section now, and it looks like, we don't have much discretion with respect to denying the continuance. But I'd be curious to hear what everyone else says.
Commissioner Lambert?
Well, I agree. I know a lot of those members of the public have spoken to them, and so it's it's taken a lot of time on everybody's part. But I think it's in the best interest of everyone because of what I understand from Sean is it's going to be a different request before us. So what they're speaking to tonight is not going to be relevant very likely on June 16th. So that's really important.
Well, yeah, just to clarify, I will say my understanding is that the staff report, and I want to keep this very, very brief, but my understanding is that the staff report recommending the recommendations in the staff report prompted some internal review, and the complication of the additional counsel has made it difficult all around to provide a clear path or a clear decision on the part of the commission. I will say to colleagues that I did have extensive discussions with the city attorney, and I am confident that and hopeful that a continuance at a future date will provide the city and all interested parties in this matter to have a full and robust conversation on the merits of the proposal before us. Commissioner Raskin, I really want to keep this conversation limited.
Yeah, just a clarifying question. I'm not sure who can answer this, but can the applicant procedurally come back with a different request under the same application, or would they have to file a new application, new planning application for the zone text amendment?
Heidi, can you, I think we're getting into merits here, so I don't think that the question of a future application is germane to whether or not we would grant a continuance tonight. As far as we're concerned, we're coming back in a month to talk about the staff report that is in front of us tonight. So I'm actually going to hold off on asking staff to respond to that.
Okay.
I would assume that any applicant is free to file any application at any time and or withdraw. But that would be, let's assume that what's happening on June 16th is simply we're picking up where we are right now. The applicant has come to us with a new counsel, and on the basis of the ordinance, we are pretty much constrained to accept their request because Ms. Fonstel was appointed less than a week ago and spoke to staff for the first time today. I think on pure due process grounds, we need to address that and make a decision based on that. So, any other comments? Okay, let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Raskin?
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert?
Yes.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Rees?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor is absent, and Chair Landris.
Yes, so the matter is now continued. I do want to address the public. Many people who pre-registered, following what Commissioner Raskin said. I want to acknowledge that many people, many staff people, many people with an interest in this permit, no matter their perspective, have put in a lot of time and energy, commissioners included, who've read the materials, to be prepared for tonight's meeting. A continuance is never an ideal situation. And for those people who took time out of their busy schedules to call in and express themselves to us, I want to apologize for the inconvenience on behalf of all parties to this matter and invite you to pencil in June 16th because we really do want to hear from you. We want to hear from everybody about this project. We want to hear your views. Please know that all public comment that has been received has been recorded, has been reviewed by the Commission, and we will continue to receive public comment through June 16th, and we welcome your public comment. If changes occur to this permit, they will be posted transparently. The public will be made aware pursuant to all legal obligations and notices, and there will be plenty of opportunity for public comment to be received on any changes to what would be before the Commission on June 16th. But as of now, what is happening is we are stopping now. And we will pick up this very conversation as if it were right now on Wednesday, June 16th. Okay, let us now move on to item 10A, are there any updates or thoughts from commissioners related to the work happening on the housing element? Anybody been to any good webinars that they want staff to know about?
One thing I sent something to Melissa today for all of you from the Anderson School about the virtual office market projections for the next survey and how they are not coming back after COVID. So you should all get that. It's sometime in June.
We'll look out for it.
I will be sending that shortly.
Okay.
Sean, I have a question, sort of a point of information.
Yeah.
You know, we've had a number of small details, and I'll use the one by Commissioner Raskin about how to count fractional units. And there's maybe 20 items that are sort of floating right now of ideas that we have for streamlining or doing different tweaks to the whole system. What's the best way to herd those through the chute so they end up being voted on either individually or collectively as a package and then moved on to staff to be incorporated in our recommendations to the city council? What's the critical path, in other words?
Right. So for one of the reasons that we put this item on the agenda for every single planning meeting between now and the conclusion was to be able to surface those in a somewhat organized way so that staff could hear them and the public could hear them, and then hopefully take them up. But I don't know, do we have Jing yet? Or maybe, Jing is here. Jing, what's the best answer to Mario's question? How do we get this stuff to you?
So, you know, I think we're also trying to, like, as we said at our last study session, you know, we're not in a position to be taking like a continuous flow of new ideas. Just the timing of this doesn't lend itself well to that. We will be returning to the Planning Commission on May the 12th with a refinement of the concepts that were presented to you. I don't remember the date, but whenever we did that, for the draft concepts. As kind of a next level piece of it. And I think just recognize that the draft housing element will be a refinement of those concepts. So when we return to you in June, it'll be a refinement of all those concepts. We'll have a pretty formed idea of where those might lead to. But remember that there are implementation pieces, and to the extent that Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi is talking about ordinances, code changes, and the like, those will come back in September. Right, and if for some reason we don't get all of that kind of done all together, I think our intent is to bring that all together as a package. But if that's not done, we do have time even after the housing element is certified to do all those implementation pieces, as long as the policy and the intent is in the housing element. So, you know, I think that we have obviously all of the commission's comments and direction. We have the council's direction. May the 12th is really about coming back to you all and just, you know, ensuring that what we bring forward is consistent with the council, with the council's direction, and that we have addressed all of the ideas and issues that have been raised. We also had pit stops at the Rent Control Board and the Housing Commission as well, you know, and we kind of have a list of the things that we're working on to bring back in May for you. Does that address your question in terms of process?
Yeah, well, I'll go down one step then. If someone has an idea that, for instance, helps in streamlining, or however you define that, and they wanted that to be brought to the surface so it could be incorporated into the housing element, meaning we believe this step will create X number of units or will shorten the approval time by Y, whatever it is, and it would be a valuable asset to the actual housing element and help it withstand scrutiny at the state level, that you're saying we're not going to be able to do before it gets actually sent off, in a sense, is what you're saying.
I mean, it depends on the idea. I guess when you say something like streamlining, you know, obviously anyone can email me, can email us on the housing element team at housingupdate@smgov.net. We've had the community, you know, emailing ideas throughout the process. I think all I'm saying is I just, you know, we're at the point where we don't have a lot of time. We're actively kind of like concurrently developing, you know, the policy and the concepts and drafting, you know, the housing element. It's just the timeline we're on. So if there are ideas out there, I would encourage you to get them to us as soon as possible so that we can consider it. And, you know, hopefully they have been things that have been articulated in public meetings, you know, so that we have some sense as to where it all fits. But if it is like detailed things, you know, in terms of, like I said, specific details in the code or code revisions, those are things that are going to be part of implementation pieces brought forward in the fall and potentially beyond if, you know, they don't all get done. Those sorts of details about process don't necessarily need to be articulated specifically in the housing element. If it's a whole approach and a concept, then that's a whole different issue.
So so for example, when we look at the council's direction, for instance, to consider R1 conversations, you know, with respect to exclusionary zoning and how we would respond to that, there are probably an infinite number of ways that could be responded to, and an infinite number of code design opportunities. What would be the best way for members of the public or members of the Planning Commission to, you know, if somebody thinks they have a thought about, you know, an effective way to do that, to respond to that, what's the best way to put that in front of you, or just send you an email?
I mean, yeah, exactly. Send me an email, or I mean, as you recognize, the commission has this item on every single agenda. So if the commission, you know, if you, as Commissioner Lambert did tonight, or I think as any number of you have throughout this process, you know, you found something on the internet, or you have a, you know, piece of publication or what have you, you know, you forward it to us, we will share it with the entire commission, and the purpose of this item is for you all to discuss, you know, that sort of thing, if you'd like, at every meeting. But if you do have particular ideas that you'd like staff to explore, now is the time. But again, recognizing we don't have infinite amounts of time to be running down every possible idea, you know, so if you do have thoughts, I think we would appreciate, you know, some formation behind them, you know, to provide us some idea as to why, you know, you think this would be adequately addressing the council's direction. We, of course, are also, you know, going down an approach of, you know, addressing the council's direction as well.
I saw Commissioner Raskin, and then we'll come back to it.
Yeah, well, while we're on this topic, I do want to encourage thank you and everyone else on staff to really take to heart what the rent board said at their last meeting. I thought that the observations that they had were really important, and especially in light of one thing we saw tonight, the item that came up in item 8A involved the conversion of a building that was once 8 rent-controlled units that now has been lost forever. You know, and it's something that's going to continue to escalate over the next few years, and I think really should be a priority with respect to our conversations moving forward. But yeah, well, I'll be in touch offline with further thoughts on that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
What my thought was, Gene, was that there may be things that we talk about that we argue among ourselves and then come to a conclusion as that would be our recommendation. And then they should be going to you. Otherwise, you're going to get, like Commissioner Lauder said, you're going to get an incredible stream of information. They're all going to be firing in different directions. And we haven't debated it yet. And, you know, and we might not reach consensus on things, but that would be important for you to know, too, that that was an issue that was divisive for whatever reason. So I guess what I'm saying, I'm just trying to spare you from the infinite attack of the 10,000 mosquitoes and have it sorted down so that it comes as one giant mosquito that you can swat at or put in your collection of good mosquitoes.
Are you volunteering to be a mosquito, Mario?
Yeah, we're all mosquitoes.
We got a lot of mosquitoes. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And like I said, May 12th was the special meeting we had set, you know, for that purpose, to sort of have that midway check-in before, you know, you have this like document that just shows up, you know, in June. So in advance of that, if you have information you'd like to share with the rest of the commission ahead of that meeting, or that we could package up with that, I think that would be helpful. We forward things along as they're shared by individual commissioners. Obviously, you can't have discussions outside of an open meeting, but at any upcoming meeting, you could have a discussion, under this standing item.
So one thing, yeah. Any other? I will mention something in the spirit of that. But one, is there anybody else who wanted to add anything housing element related? Okay, so I do want to pose the question, because I've been giving some thought to the council's fair housing direction, and the question of R1 and how best to preserve the intent of our anti-mansionization ordinance, how best to achieve density that does not blow through the kinds of forms that ordinance envisioned. And one thing that I would like to I'll say, since we're having this conversation, pose to staff is, to the extent that we're doing this, we want to achieve maximum price diversity. I'm not going to kid anyone and say affordability, because of the very high land costs in most of Santa Monica's R1, and I recognize that this is not about achieving necessarily, RENA production. But one of the things that we've seen, and item 8A is less of an indicator of that than some other things that we've seen, is that we tend to see people underbuilding to the envelope, right? If we say that at 4 units you have to pay an in lieu fee, we see a lot of people presenting us with 3 units of housing. And so one of the questions that I would pose to staff, and I would welcome a future conversation on, is when we zone for envelopes, what are the measures that we are going to do to incentivize people to actually build to those envelopes and produce the housing counts that we believe should be built for those sites? And it's a conversation that I think we ought to have in public. It's a conversation that I think connects to a wide variety of issues, about concerns about size and massing, but also concerns about how we capture value for the Housing Trust Fund or other, if we're creating value, how are we capturing a share of that to generate affordable housing, whether on-site or elsewhere. But I do think that if we're going to go down this road, we actually want that housing, if we say we want housing built, we want it built. And we don't want people showing up with much less housing so that they can avoid fees and things that we need to accompany the housing that we want to produce. So I'm hoping that can be at some point part of the conversation, how we actually intend to get those units produced.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, I think we have to do the work. We received a direction, and I think you're speaking specifically to that residential neighborhoods, particularly council's direction.
Particularly R1 and the R2 neighborhoods.
Yeah, because we don't normally see underbuilding in our commercial zones. That's for sure.
Exactly.
I think there's maximizing of the envelope in there. We do see that in residentially zoned neighborhoods, and part of that is analysis that we're working through with HR&A, because we have to present. Council gave, I think, direction, but there are I think a handful of ways that could go, and we're trying to give formation to that and information. So we will be returning with kind of options on how you could approach it, given I think what we heard was the goals of as you're saying, increasing price diversity in those neighborhoods, and really about equitable housing access to all neighborhoods, and not just people aren't just funneled here or there depending on how much you make. So I think that was a big overarching theme of that direction. But secondly, there was an interest in could inclusionary housing succeed in that, and so we need to kind of understand what the limits of that is. So I think what we want to return with is some sense of, okay, if you want to have inclusionary, here's how many units you need to support that, or if we're willing to sort of just forego that goal and just settle on the sort of diversity of pricing, and recognize that it might still be kind of high, here's another way you could do it. So I think, I don't know the answer to that yet. We're doing that analysis, but that's what we hope to return with that will, give some sense to that.
Right. And if there's inclusionary, what kind of inclusionary is it? Is it moderate rate housing as opposed to
exactly. Yeah.
low, very low or low, right?
Right.
We need to achieve those numbers. Commissioner Lambert.
I agree totally with everything you said, Sean. The issue that we've seen over the years is because AHPP triggers at 4 units, we see 3 units. And I'm not for condos, and I'm not sure how we can make somebody build 4 units, but we should explore that. The other thing I'm hearing, and I hope that we are not going down this path, is looking at, I'm a strong supporter of city property for the 100% affordable housing. But that is not the only answer. What I hope we're not going to do, and I suspect we're not to, is basically stack city properties way beyond, reasonable density and say, well, we've met our rate on affordable housing goal. And I'm hearing that from people, and I hope it's not happening.
No.
We can hear you.
We're just letting it sink in. We're letting your remarks sink in.
With AB 1763 and already downtown heights being what they are, you could end up with a 10 or 12 story low-income family housing project. But I think it's terribly bad planning to do that. So I hope we're not looking at that.
And go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
Yeah. Again, we're having to look at the city sites. They have unique considerations. Depending on which site you're talking about, they're not sort of all treated the same. So. Again, that's analysis we're doing, and we'll have to return with more information as to how to implement council's direction.
Thank you. Thanks. I just will say thanks to, I don't know where the conversation is, but I was very glad to see that staff reached out to the leadership of the Santa Monica Area Interfaith Council to start that, sort of an integrated conversation about church parking lots and synagogue and Sangha parking lots. So that was great. That was a great step forward, and hopefully that kind of outreach will.
Yeah, and we've had conversations with the school district and UCLA so far. So
good.
And updates on DMV too. So.
Okay. Oh, and the DMV too. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Wonderful. All right. Well, with that, are there any other comments on the housing element? And we can keep going. All right. We'll move on to written communications. Want to draw your attention to the general public correspondence that we have received. And also, Commissioner Raskin submitted the Surplus Land Act guidelines for our edification. And I forwarded a ULI report that I learned about from the Economic Recovery Task Force anniversary meeting. Essentially, the city was cited as one of as a global leader, really, in the repurposing of public space during the pandemic, and so I thought that would be of interest to commissioners. And our planning staff has had a heck of a year, and to see that recognition for their nimble and responsive and creative work across multiple divisions, whether in planning or public works, is a real tribute to their creativity and their ingenuity and their working with the public and businesses to keep our public spaces vibrant in a very difficult time. So I thought it was a great shout out that deserved our attention and the attention of the public. Any comments on our public correspondence, our written correspondence? Seeing none, let us move on to general public input, item 12. Do we have anybody pre-registered for general public input?
Not for item 12, no.
No. I am noticing, and I don't know if we still have our translator with us. I'm noticing a number of people who are logging in expecting to comment on item 9A. I just want to remind the public and our listeners that item 9A has been continued to June 16th, 2021. All public comment received for item 9A has been received and reviewed and continuing public comment can be received through June 16th. So if you're here expecting to comment on 9A, it's not going to happen tonight, but will happen when the item is heard on Wednesday, June 16th. Thank you for logging in, and we apologize for the inconvenience of the continuance. With that, I believe we can adjourn.
You broke a record, Sean.
Yeah, new land speed record.
Yeah, you
Terrific.
broke
Our
Nice to
shortest
see you all.
meeting is 20 minutes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.